Good morning. I'll be with you momentarily, just trying to get the live stream set up. Francis, are you all set to go?
Yes, sir, I am.
Outstanding. Let me turn you up on my side of the house. All right. All right. Well, let's get started. Good morning to all of those that are both in person as well as joining us online via Facebook. Uh, we're also trying to get it streamed to YouTube as well, so that way we can have just this conversation and just this time together. Uh, Welcome to our discussion on mental health and how the church can collaborate with mental health professionals as we come together, as we finish out our month on recognizing mental health. Um, I am Reverend Michael Hopkins. I'm the executive minister here at Owen Chapel AME Church. And with us today is Frances Thomas Lee. She is the founder and clinical director for Casa de Luz Counseling Services in Las Cruces, New Mexico. And having an opportunity to speak with her uh, the last couple times, she has been truly a blessing to me personally uh, in getting to know her just a little bit more. And so she agreed to really just come and speak to us about what mental health is, how we can partner as a church with mental health professionals, some of the things that we need to look for and look at when it comes to mental health, and just really get involved. Um, from the different aspects of what mental health really encompasses and how we can uh, be a supportive factor when it comes to those that are facing mental health crises in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So I won't belabor our time, and I don't want to cut into Director Thomas Lee's time. Uh, if you do have questions, and you are joining us via Zoom directly, you can put them in the chat. If you're joining us via social media, please put your questions in the chat so that way we can hopefully get your questions answered. Uh, we do have a 1 hour discussion set up for those of us that are on social media. And then we'll get a little bit more intimate and familiar off of social media. So if you do have that link to the Zoom directly, uh, you'll be able to answer a little bit more on the questions uh, following our presentation here on Facebook. But before we begin anything else, we're going to pray us in. We're going to pray us in. And so uh, our pastor is here, but I'm gonna pray. She has asked me to pray, so we're gonna pray us in together. Father God, we come first of all just saying thank you. Thank you for this day. Thank you for allowing us to come together because we know that there are many mental health challenges and crises that people are facing each and every day. And God, you have called us to be uh, just a bearer of those that are facing different crises of that nature. So that way we can help shoulder the burden and lift the burdens and place all of our burdens upon you, most of all, because you are our burden bearer, our heavy load carrier, and our heavy load sharer, God. So we say thank you in advance for this time together to be able to learn more about what we can do as a community to be able to make our communities better, not just inside of the church, but throughout the entire community. And God, we thank you for Director Thomas Lee as she comes to us and presents to us uh, what you might have to say through her on today. We thank you for this time together. We thank you for the food that is here in person that we're about to receive also for the nourishment of our bodies. Bless those hands that did prepare the food on today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Uh, Francis Thomas Lee. Again, I've had a few discussions with her uh, via text message and email and voice phone call, and she is dynamic. Um, and she is powerful, and God is using her uh, to help us understand a little bit better of what we can do as a church and as a community to help one another out. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and you just go right on ahead and you teach us. We are excited.
Well, thank you, Reverend, so much for that introduction, for the prayer. I'm so blessed to be here today. Um, so I just want to start with a little testimony. I was in church and they're talking about serving and that sort of thing. And I said, Lord, how can I serve at this stage in my life? And then my daughter comes to me and says, Mom, there's a reverend who wants you to give a presentation. So I was like, okay, yeah. And right there and then I knew the Lord wanted me to do it. So I really thank God for this opportunity. And so let's go ahead and begin. So this presentation is about breaking barriers, understanding cultural, historical, and systemic mental health issues in underserved communities, and then also with the aging, with individuals aging. So I want to say a little bit about myself. And first of all, I'm a child of God. I'm a mother, a veteran, and then, of course, a therapist. I am licensed in the state of New Mexico as a marriage and family therapist, and I specialize in trauma. And I also do faith-based support. So when I'm doing therapy, it's not just, working on the anxiety, especially for my clients who are believers in Christ. I'm able to pray with them. I'm able to pour into them. And so I love that God is able to use me that way, not just clinically, but also spiritually. Okay, let me see how I get rid of this little thing here. Nope, not that. Sorry. Where the... Okay, there we go. So first of all, what is mental health? Mental health affects our thinking, our behavior, our actions, and everyone's experience is different. Like someone might have depression and they experience it different than a different person. Someone with depression as a child will experience it different than an adult or maybe even a senior. And so where does mental health come from? We don't really know. We have our theories. A lot of it can come from genetics, environment, lifestyle. We know all those things contribute to mental health, but we really don't know the root of it. Um, so I love this quote, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So that is my motto for my practice because when I was in school learning to be a therapist, I was like, oh wow, that theory is rooted in the Bible, and that theory is also in the Bible. So I began to tell myself, I don't have to compromise being a therapist. I can still use the word of God for healing and transforming people. And it really is about transforming and renewing your mind. So this encourages mental health renewing and spiritual growth. So here we have a picture. Looks like a perfect family, right? Mom and dad in the middle, kiddos on the side. Looks like granddad's over there. Even the dog looks happy. So oftentimes people will come to church and they look just like this. They look like nothing's going on. How are you doing today? Bless, praise the Lord. How are you? Oops, wrong way. And so is this family really the perfect family? A few facts. 1 in 5 Americans experience mental illness annually. I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty high. And I think about children in the classroom, what the teachers have to go through. If they have, 20, 25 kids in the classroom, how many of those kids might be affected by something that's affecting their learning? And the facts also say that 1 in 25 live with a serious condition, such as schizophrenia. And then mental illness is medical. It's not a moral failing. Oftentimes we think, oh, it's just a flaw in them. There's nothing wrong with them, but it really is a medical condition. Why we don't seek treatment? Why don't we go see a therapist? Okay. I believe part of it is a lack of mental health education. There's a limited awareness of symptoms and treatment options. Oftentimes, we may have had an auntie or somebody who was like, we just thought they were a little weird, a little off, or they're just loud all the time. They're just getting mad all the time. But those could be symptoms. But we don't know unless we seek mental health professional to see if we can get a diagnosis. Then there's also misconceptions about therapy. Only crazy people go to therapy. I think that's starting to change now. I think more and more people are seeking therapy, but then a lot of cultural norms keep us from going to therapy. Okay. These are some of the reasons that, people of color and other cultural backgrounds don't seek mental health. So we have the Tuskegee syphilis study, and that most of us know about, where we were experimented on, particularly the men, and they weren't given the treatment. And then also racism in the medical and mental health care. And then also, there's not a lot of therapists that look like us. So, how can we go to a therapist and explain what's going on in our homes or in our minds or in our community if the person we're speaking to doesn't really get us? They don't understand. They have the training, they have the background, they'll try to do their best. But oftentimes, we want to be understood culturally as well as our mental health being worked on. So systemic inequities, oftentimes insurance or access or discrimination will keep us from getting the help that we need. So some of the stigmas of, I'm saying a lot. Some of the stigmas of mental health is that if you have a mental health issue, you have a weakness. Keep it in the family. I don't know about you all, but I heard that a lot growing up. We don't air out our dirty laundry. And believe that true strength is no suffering. Norms may prioritize toughing it out rather than seeking help. I find that particularly so in strong Black women. We can tough it out. We can carry the load. We've got this. And I think for generations, a lot of Black women, we have had to carry that load. We have had to shoulder extra burdens. And so it's become a norm, and sometimes we even wear it as a badge. And there's nothing wrong with being a strong Black woman until it starts affecting our mental health. At that point, we want to seek treatment. We want to ask for help. And then I said earlier, fear of being labeled crazy or unstable. Some faith-based conflicts. Sometimes mental health is seen as a spiritual failure, a demonic possession. I know in churches that I have been members of in the past, that was one thing. Just come up to the altar, get prayed for. We're going to cast that depression out of you. And God can do that. And if you go up to the altar and He does that, that's beautiful. Praise God. But if God doesn't give you your healing, you can still seek mental health help. And this is where the church can come in to say, it's okay. But I know for myself in the pulpit, I've heard it said that you don't need a therapist, you don't need a psychiatrist, just go to God. And I believe we should go to God first in all things. But God doesn't heal everybody. That's why we have hospitals full of sick people. But I do believe in prayer and I do believe in miracles. So I don't want this to be misconstrued. But that's where the church can come in. Um, let me see. And how the church can also partner with therapy. People who do therapy in the community, if you can find a Christian therapist who you can partner with, I think that would be really great. They could help you with handouts, little things that you could do at your church that would help your congregation. Okay. More barriers to treatment. Oftentimes in communities of color, we have decades of disinvestment in housing, education, and healthcare. Also, lack of culturally competent providers, which I've already talked about, which can lead to misdiagnosis and underdiagnosis. And when we don't get treated, it can lead to an increase in stress and exacerbate our mental health issues. Okay. So another problem that we have is over-policing and criminalization. And, we've seen this played out on social media, on the news, where people with a mental health condition are seen as hostile or out of control, failure to comply. So getting help early, getting interventions, getting our people, our family, our loved ones the help that they need, could help reduce some of these issues. And let me see. Also, underfunded schools and lack of mental health education can reduce awareness and early interventions in these populations. And again, this is where the church can come in, providing that type of education and partnering with mental health professionals. Consequences of untreated mental health. Well, we've probably seen it. Um, Sometimes people can lose their jobs, they become homeless, they have legal issues. And statistics says that 44% of individuals in jail are in jail and 37 in prison have a mental health issue. Left out a word there. So those are pretty high rates. So what do we want to do as a community, as a church, to help these individuals from landing up in jail, landing up in prison? Of course, it's a whole system. It's not just the mental health, but if we can just help in one area, I think that would really be a blessing. How can families help? Listen without judgment. I have a lot of clients who will tell me, well, my mom said, you have everything you need. You have food, shelter, clothes. You've got, games, iPhone. Why are you sad? Why are you depressed? You should just shake it off. You can't shake off depression. It's a mental health condition. It is a medical condition. So listening, if your child or family member, friend tells you they're feeling sad and they just can't seem to get rid of it. Listen without the judgment. Ask, how can I be of assistance? Oftentimes, people with mental health issues, they don't get the help because they're so depressed or they have so much anxiety that they can't get on the internet or their phone and look for somebody who takes their insurance or look for somebody, a therapist, who will see them pro bono or will see them on a sliding scale because their mental health has just brought them down to such a low point. They're barely functioning. So these individuals need help and we can help them. So be patient with your loved one and celebrate the small progress. What I see a lot is the families will say, well, they've been in therapy for 2 or 3 months and nothing has changed. But then when I start asking about certain behaviors, they go, well, yeah, they don't do that anymore. Well, yeah, that's better. But sometimes we think, okay, going to therapy is going to fix it all and it's going to be quick. depending on the diagnosis, how long this person has had this diagnosis, if they have trauma, is this person still in a situation that is not good for them? That is also going to hinder the progress. And encourage your family ones to seek medication if needed. This is another place where I think we struggle is medication is bad. And I can see why. We spoke about earlier about the barriers to getting help, the mistrust. Oftentimes, therapy is I look at it like a three-leg table. One leg is the therapist, the second leg of the table is the client, and the third leg of the table is medication. So if you take one of those legs off of the three-legged table, it's going to fall. Now, not everybody is in that situation. Sometimes just talk therapy will work, not a problem. But if you've been doing the talk therapy, you've been doing the homework, you've been doing all the things the therapist has asked you to do, and you're not seeing any relief, then it's time to see your medical doctor to see if you're a good candidate for medication. Okay. I want to talk about anxiety for just a little bit. So you see this little running man over here? This is a way that you could tell if you're like, I wonder if this person has anxiety. I wonder if I have anxiety. So some common symptoms is excessive worry or fear, feeling on edge, restlessness. I just can't concentrate. Somebody who's irritable a lot. Physical symptoms, rapid heartbeat, palpitations, you can't sleep, you fall asleep, you wake up, you can't go back to sleep, and also fatigue. So with anxiety, the brain is going, going, going. It's like that running man right there. It's going all the time. So it makes you tired. You're wondering, why am I so tired? Well, has your mind been going like that hamster on the hamster wheel, just going, 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 worrying about something in the past, worrying about something now, worrying about something in the future? If your mind is going on like that a lot and it's hard to stop, then it's time to seek professional help. Okay. Stigma behind anxiety. Anxiety is often minimized as everyday stress. I had one woman tell me that, oh, it's just my nerves. And I said, yes, your nerves is the anxiety. So sometimes we're like, oh, I don't have anxiety. It's hard for some people to get a mental health diagnosis because then they might be perceived as weak, or they might feel shamed, or the family might shame them. Even some of my clients who are like, okay, I'm ready for the next step. I think I'm ready to start medication, but I don't think my parents are going to be okay with this. And I'm talking about adults who are talking about getting medications, but they know their family. There's a stigma there from their family. First of all, just about mental health, and then medication, that's like, no, we don't do that. What about ADHD? Now, this one is one of my favorite subjects, and I actually specialize in ADHD. So what is it? Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a common disorder that affects how people pay attention. And you think of that little kid, maybe that little boy squirming in his seat. Okay, can't he getting up all the time? He's got to go to the restroom, pulling on somebody's hair. Maybe high school students or college students, they can't stay organized. They have impulse control. They're doing one thing, but then all of a sudden, hey, let's go do this over here. They can't manage their activity levels, and they can't manage their emotions. And we see this especially with kids. We call it big emotions. So imagine us as adults sometimes, even as Christians, right? We want to be Christ-like, but sometimes we miss the mark and we get loud, or we scream, or, we lose it. The goal is not to do that, but it's hard for adults, is my point. So imagine a 6-year-old who has ADHD and the parent is saying, sit down, be quiet. What did I tell you? They can't control their feelings. So then they talk back and they misbehave. And then what happens? They get in trouble. So oftentimes, there's disparities in diagnosis and treatments in communities of color, especially Black, Latino, and Indigenous families. Oftentimes, we think that ADHD is um, over-diagnosed, when in fact, studies show that it's underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed. So oftentimes, it's just, oh, that kid is just bad. No home training. What are the parents doing? Parents need to get that child in check. Oftentimes, when they do diagnose our kiddos, they want to give them a label of bipolar. So, if a child is getting that diagnosis, let's talk about that, especially if they want to put your child on bipolar medication. That's a pretty strong medication, so I would definitely recommend that you have some consultation with somebody else before moving forward with that. I'm not saying that they can't have bipolar, but with a child, it might be a little bit harder to diagnose. And so we want to be real careful with that one. And I have seen a lot of diagnosis of Black, Latino, and some Indigenous families who get that diagnosis instead of the ADHD diagnosis. And like I said earlier, the misinterpretation of behavior as poor discipline. And then sometimes there's disappropriated punishment instead of support in schools, in family, and even in church. And so we can think about this as if you're a Sunday school teacher, you've got a kid who's not really listening. You know, he's this little boy or this little girl, they're always getting in trouble. They're always doing something. Hmm, maybe they're misbehaving. Maybe they have something else going on. It may be ADHD. It may not be ADHD. Maybe they have a little bit of anxiety. So just some things to keep in mind. Or, I remember taking my girls to church and, they're sitting next to me and they're not in Sunday school yet and they're squirming around, and I'm just like giving them the little side eye, like, hey, stop that, you know. Come to find out, they had ADHD, and I do too. Okay. So some believe that ADHD is just made up. And so what happens when we say that to our loved one, it invalidates their experience. Mindsets like just try harder or pray it away also invalidates the individual's experience, especially if we say we're going to pray for it, we're going to pray for it, we're going to pray for it. Individuals start to say, well, why isn't God healing me? Why isn't this going away? Why am I not getting better? There must be something wrong with me. And so oftentimes you'll see kids with ADHD and adults, they may be labeled as lazy because they're disorganized. Their home is just not clean, poor parenting, and sometimes a lack of discipline. Okay, what helps? So, faith-based support, bridging clinical and spiritual care. We've talked about that a little bit. Community education definitely reduces stigma. Advocacy in schools, including Sunday school. And recognizing that boys are more likely to be diagnosed while girls with ADHD may go unnoticed, unsupported, and untreated. And I've really seen that in my practice. I have diagnosed quite a few women in their 40s, their 50s, their 30s who thought there was just something wrong with them. I can't function. I forget my keys. I'm always losing my cell phone. Little things that most of us won't forget, maybe every now and then, but I'm talking about these individuals are losing things, being disorganized, not just with physical things, but being disorganized in their mind as well. And so when I give these women their diagnosis and ask them, what do you feel now that you know you have this diagnosis? Almost every time they'll start crying and they'll say, "Oh my God, I always thought there was something wrong with me." And so sometimes getting that diagnosis can actually set somebody free. And and then they can start the healing. They can start learning tools to help with all those issues that come up. Bipolar, what is it? So oftentimes we think of bipolar of somebody who's crazy, but really it's just two ends of the spectrum. Very low mood, depression, and then mania, very high. And sometimes people will come to me and they'll say, "I think I have bipolar." And I'd be like, "Okay, do you have mania?" And they go, "Oh yeah, I sometimes I'll just clean the whole house." And I'm like, "Okay, that's good." But do you stay up all night? Do you feel like you have energy for days and then all of a sudden you crash? That would be more of mania, where you can go 3, 4, let's say 2 to 3 days with no sleep, and you're just going like the Energizer Bunny. That is definitely a symptom that we want to take a look at professionally. Um, some false beliefs. Sometimes we just think, "Oh, you're just moody or unstable," or people with bipolar are dangerous. Anybody can be dangerous when they get mad. So these are some labels that we put on people that aren't necessarily always true. And then again, a lot of times people just say this is just an excuse for bad behavior. Depression. Depression symptoms is persistent sadness, hopelessness, low energy. They don't want to eat, and sometimes they eat too much, headaches, stomach issues. And oftentimes, people with depression, they're really labeled as lazy. Just get out of bed, just push through it. But a person with clinical depression, they can't do that. So, somebody who's sad or grieving because they lost a loved one, that's different than depression. Um, let's say you lost your dog and it's been in the family for a long time. You might get sad, you might have some depressed symptoms, but eventually those will go away. With depression, it's much more than what I just described. Okay. Stigma. Snap out of it. Depression is wrongly viewed as something that people can just shake off. Let me see, I think I already talked about this. Oh, depression may be seen as a lack of faith, delaying clinical support. So, again, this is a place where the church could say, "We're going to pray for you, and then we want you to see a therapist." So, if the church has like some therapists that you trust, some therapists that you could um, refer people from the congregation to, that would be really good because, like I said earlier, sometimes it's hard for individuals to actually find a therapist. We do have a shortage of therapists in the state of New Mexico, and an even bigger shortage of psychiatrists who prescribe the medication. Also, there are some prescribing psychologists in the state of New Mexico that can prescribe medication. So, oftentimes in our community, seeking medication is seen as a lack of faith or a weakness. But medication is very valid. It's sort of like if you're taking insulin for diabetes, maybe you're taking medication for ADHD or you're taking medication for depression. And I always tell my clients, let's try all the tricks that I have in my bag before we go to medication. When we've done all of that and they're making some progress, but they're not at what I call baseline, short of a miracle, it's going to be very difficult for them to get to baseline. They're so low or they have so much anxiety that they're not at what we call baseline, which is being able to function. So if we want people to function, sometimes they need the medication. And then once they get the medication, they're able to now use the tools. Okay, types of therapy. So you can do outpatient, that's what I do, but all of my sessions are online. And everyone in my clinic is online. So you can do outpatient where you live at home and you go see a therapist for an hour once a week, maybe twice a week if it's really severe. We have inpatient, which is 24-hour care where you're supervised. And then we have partial, where you go to therapy all day and you have training and discussions and group, but then you go home at night. Now, oftentimes with the inpatient, sometimes I think people are afraid or families are afraid of sending their loved one to inpatient. So if you have a family member who's just out of control, you can always call the police and ask for a wellness check. Or if you can't reach somebody, let's say you have a family member in another state and you're worried about them because they told you they wanted to do self-harm, you can call the police department in that area so they can do a wellness check. Now, if they do a wellness check and they feel they need to be put in the hospital for a 72-hour hold, that's usually just enough time for them to be in a safe space with doctors and caregivers for typically it's 72 hours, longer if that person is still talking about self-harm. I know it probably sounds like a very scary thing and like, well, I don't want them to go to the hospital. And I understand that. What's the alternative? Are you able to stay home with them 24/7 and make sure they don't hurt themselves? Or do you have to go to work? Does a child have to go to school? And so the 24-hour, or sorry, 72-hour inpatient care is so that individuals do not harm themselves. I've had clients go into the hospital and they said, wow, it was like a vacation. I didn't have to think, I didn't have to cook, I didn't have to drop the kids off at school. And and then in the groups, they'll say it was really nice to hear other people who are going through the same thing that I'm going through. So they come out refreshed, they're feeling better, and they're able to continue with their daily life. Okay. Alzheimer's and mental health in underserved communities and the role of the church. So, what to look for? Early signs of memory loss, confusion, change in normal behaviors, and then also difficulty in completing tasks. Now, they may not have all of these symptoms all at once. It might be one here and then another one another day. It might be a different symptom. So we want to keep a lookout for that. So the stigma behind mental decline, oftentimes shame, embarrassment, um, confusion can lead to silence and lack of support. And then also the individual is going through a loss of independence, or they might forget, oh, I forgot I told you that yesterday. And what do? Mom, you just told me that. Mom, you told me that already. Dad, you said that. You told me 3 times. So now it's sort of like we're shaming the individual instead of helping them. Okay. Statistics. Black Americans are twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's than white Americans. Latinos, 1.5 times more likely. Um, Also, Black Americans and Latinos have less access to diagnosis, care, and supportive services. Also, it's often underdiagnosed because we think, oh, mom and dad are just getting older, auntie's just getting older. So delayed treatment are very common in our communities. And then see your doctor as soon as possible. Not knowing if, okay, is mom or dad just getting a little older and they're just getting a little forgetful, or is there something more going on? So seeing your doctor as soon as possible is going to be helpful so that they can get the care they need. The emotional impact on families and caregiver burnout. You know, when you're taking care of somebody who can't take care of themselves and you love them, you want to do for them, but maybe you have to go to work. Maybe you have small children at home, or maybe there's problems in the marriage. So caregiver burnout is very common. So something that we see is anger, guilt, confusion, grief. And so we want to take care of ourselves. We want to take breaks. We want to have self-compassion for ourselves because it's not easy always taking care of somebody. Okay. Planning ahead for cognitive decline. What are some things that we can do with our loved ones, or what are some things the church can do? Early intervention and preparing for care and living arrangements. So I don't know any senior citizen that says, I don't want to live in my home. Almost everyone says, I don't want to leave my home. So that's kind of hard. That's their place of safety. They've been there for a long time. They're settled in. And if they move in with you and your spouse and your kids, it's going to be very difficult for them. So figuring out what's going to be best for everyone, because if our senior citizen with cognitive decline is at home, are they going to be safe, even though they're saying, I don't want to leave home? So having these discussions prior to the cognitive decline is going to be very helpful for everybody. Sometimes you may need to get a power of attorney to help make decisions for your loved one with cognitive decline. You want to review important documents, insurance, finances, medical records. In today's day and time, you know, what's the password to the computer or the phone, or a shared login. And then also discuss about future caregiving responsibilities with other family members. Are there other siblings that can help? Or are you the only child that lives near the parents and everybody else lives in another state? How is this going to be done to help mom or dad or auntie or uncle? And financial planning, of course, is always good, and encourage medical checkups and cognitive assessment. So when you go to your family doctor, they should be doing cognitive assessments if your loved one is saying, you know, they're getting more forgetful and they're having big emotions, or they're losing things. So it's also encouraged, you know, talk to your loved one and say, hey, mom, can I go to the doctor with you? I'd like to be able to sit in and talk to the doctor and see, you know, what's going on and how I can help you. Sometimes our loved ones will say, no, I still have full autonomy. I can do this by myself. I'm not a child. So you know, having those conversations ahead of times and being patient with our loved ones is going to be very helpful. Okay. How the church can help? Educate, host formal sessions on dementia and mental health, such as this one, and offer caregiver support groups and respite programs. That could be difficult if you're a small church, but if you have the availability to send a sister to someone's home to allow the caregiver to have a night off, that would be great. Doesn't have to be constant help, but just a short period of time can help. Make services dementia friendly if you have that capability. You know, like for little kids, we have the babies, you might have a cry room. Maybe you have a room for adults with dementia where they can still sit in and hear the message, but they can still be safe. And then again, work with local mental health providers and affirm them. Oh, sorry. Oops, wrong way. And affirm them. Reinforce that seeking help aligns with faith and compassion. So oftentimes, individuals of faith will say, well, I don't need help. I'm just going to pray about it. Again, prayer is beautiful, but if you or your loved one and you see that they're struggling, It could be something other than it's just faith, that they're waiting for God to come through. It could also be shame or guilt, or they don't want to burden their children, or they don't want to burden their grandchildren. So it might be a little bit of pride. So that is definitely something the church can do is pray for them with the pride. And then shifting the cultural narrative in our community is just reframing mental health through storytelling. Oftentimes we do storytelling, we tell about great grandma, or we talk about back in the day. Most of us don't ever talk about our mental health in past generations. Oftentimes, mental health is generational. In the church, we might say, oh, there's generational curses. Well, in therapy, we call there's a generational transmission, which means that it's passed from one generation to the next generation, mental health. Even for a mom who might have anxiety and she's pregnant, she can pass those feelings of anxiety into the child. So when the child is born, they're born anxious. They're crying a lot. You don't know what's wrong with them. You've changed them, you've fed them, you've burped them, you've put them in the stroller. So sometimes kids, even babies, will show signs of anxiety. And then you can also highlight successful people who have sought therapy, who get therapy. I want to consider myself somewhat successful. I have depression, I have anxiety, I have PTSD, and I have ADHD. But I run a business. I see clients. I take medication. I have my own therapist. And I share that with you because oftentimes we're ashamed, but I didn't make myself this way, and I'm a child of God and I'm seeking help. So I'm seeking help for myself first so I can be a help to others. So normalizing emotional expression in our healing journeys, such as what I just shared with you, just normalize it. With 1 in 5 people experiencing a mental health condition at least once a year, I think more people should be talking about it. So if we can change the narrative, that would be awesome. And we may not change the narrative in our country, we may not change the narrative in our state, but can we change the narrative in our community? Can we change the narrative in our church? Can we change the narrative in our home? Okay, final thoughts. Mental illness does not discriminate. Healing begins with understanding and access to professional care. And mental health care must be safe and affirming. Okay, any questions? Let's talk about it. Is anybody there? And that concludes the presentation. Thank you for listening. And if anyone has questions, I'm more than happy to hear the questions or to take questions. Let's see.
Okay, thank you. That was a lot of information. Let me.
That's a lot.
um, let's see. Give me 1 second.
Take your time.
I'm still I'm still navigating as there we go. Uh, so we have, as I was explaining to you yesterday, we actually have our presiding elder, Reverend Sherilyn Curry Hodge. I'm going to ask her to go ahead and come off of mute, and you are more than welcome to ask your question.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for sharing that information. It's always been a concern of mine how we couch things, particularly in church settings, and in some cases how we shame people into not getting help. And so we have to do a better job, or even subscribe to a job of changing that narrative so that people can get the help that they deserve and the help that they need. I think in many cases that will help our churches thrive and be better as well. Because when we don't allow folks to get the help, we just perpetuate the problem. So
Yes, ma'am.
thank you so much for sharing what you shared. I don't have any particular questions. I was just nodding in agreement on point. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. My
And
pleasure.
thank you, Reverend Michael, for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. I know you have a busy schedule sometimes, so I do appreciate you joining in with us on today.
You're welcome.
We do have a question in our live audience. Go ahead.
Okay, the question I have asking is that she was talking about the cognitive, the yeah, you start, how do you recognize when some of it is starting to be able to go and say, let me go get checked out? Because she referred to the memory for one thing, is that kind of remember stuff, and it's getting to the point where you may end up getting a phone number, for example, or something that someone tell you something, and then maybe a minute or two later, it's like, huh, what was that? Is that part of the cognitive, trying to get things checked out?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yeah, it's never too soon. And what your doctor will do is they'll start keeping track. Like, okay, you told your loved one, you know, oh, hey, do you want some tea? And they'll be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then like 5 minutes later, they'll be saying, hey, can I have some tea? And they're just repeating themselves. So, but then maybe the next day they're just fine. They're not repeating themselves. Definitely, that's the time to go and get some help. See your doctor so you can start measuring the amount of forgetfulness. Um, because we're all going to decline, right? We're all going to forget stuff, but we want to track it. So it's never too soon is the answer. I think to add to that, it's going to be, will the person go to see the doctor? That's what I see a lot of is they're like, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not going to go to the doctor. You know, I can't hear. I can't hear.
Okay, so the question was asked, how do you get the person to go uh, if they're if they're not recognizing their own sign
Hmm.
of mental decline?
Yes, that's very difficult to do, but it's not impossible. You know, listening to them, being compassionate, loving them, not judging them. If you already have a loving relationship with them, just explain to them, I noticed yesterday you did this, and then and the day before that you did this. I wonder, if we should get this checked out. But definitely, if we're not kind, and loving, they won't go. So we can't force anybody to go. But this is also where the church can come in and say, we recommend screenings. When your loved one starts telling you you're forgetting a lot, let's get screenings. Let's all do it together. Maybe if there's a doctor in the community, maybe they can come to the church and do it. And something else I want to add to that real quick is a lot of times we start losing our hearing, and loss of hearing leads to dementia or Alzheimer's. And I use them interchangeably because Alzheimer's is a part of dementia. So check your hearing. My mom, for instance, does not want hearing aids. I can't make her get them, but I did let her know, Mom, not being able to hear increases the probability of dementia.
There was something that you had said, and I kind of want you to address it a little bit further, and that is when someone is in crises, uh, and you had recommended calling 911 for law enforcement. From what I'm seeing, and I came from Phoenix a couple years ago, and they had started a community action uh, network of volunteers uh, that specifically deal with mental health crises. And I've also seen it in Albuquerque with the I can't remember the name that they specifically have it, but it seems like some of the larger communities are starting to um, farm out uh, to when it becomes a mental health crisis, rather than having the police department respond, uh, having these community care providers
Yes.
actually respond. Can you talk about that a little bit more and how that actually works in relation to someone actually calling 911 and how that plays a
Yes.
part?
Yes, absolutely. And I could see how calling 911 and calling the police, especially for us people of color, we have a mental health family member who's, kind of like going off, how it could be scary calling the police. So what a lot of police departments are doing is they will assess over the phone. So like if I called in and I said, my child is out of control and I can't control him. He's 16 years old. He's stronger than me and I don't know what to do. They will often get a crisis team over to you. So it's not always necessarily that a police officer is going to come to your home. They will send a crisis team if they can. Sometimes the police officer will come. And but yes, like you said, Reverend, in some cities, they do have the crisis team. In some cities, a psychologist or a therapist will ride along with the police officer. I haven't seen that too much in New Mexico, maybe in Albuquerque, I think you said they did that, maybe the bigger cities. But that's what I could offer in regards to that. Is
And
there another question?
yes, presiding elder, go ahead.
Okay, I was trying to unmute. Okay, so one of the things that's happening in the church today is with Bishop Brookins' emphasis on mental health, music, and mission, is we have mental health ambassadors that are being trained in. It's supposed to be in each local congregation, but we realize that each local congregation may not have capacity or have the expertise. And so, but what she is doing is making Thursdays mental health wellness days. So there are different populations of people that have been invited to gather on the first Thursday, the second Thursday, the third Thursday, and even clergy on the fourth Thursday. So we do have a bishop that is very in tune to our mental health and trying to break the stigma surrounding that. So we're grateful for her in what she does. So again, it's in some pockets it's happening, but on a large scale, we just have to, do more where we can locally. That's it.
Thank you, Elder.
Mhm.
Yeah, and there's also crisis lines that you can call. It doesn't always have to be the police at first, but if they're threatening self-harm or harming someone else, then I would escalate it to a 911 call or
Mm.
just call the local police station if they're in imminent danger. If you have a loved one saying, I don't want to live anymore, this is just too hard, I can't take it, you can call the crisis line. You can also just take your loved one to the emergency room or to a mental hospital. Um, we don't want to go to the ER. We all know that's a long wait,
Mhm.
but they will evaluate, and then if they feel, okay, yeah, no, they can go home, right? Or, yeah, we're going to transfer them to the mental hospital, excuse me, for their safety. And I know we don't want to do this to our loved ones, but if they're talking about hurting themselves,
Mhm.
we can't, oftentimes we can't keep them from doing that. And it's a cry for help when they're saying, I want to hurt myself. Most people do not want to end their life. It's just so hard. I just want to stress that it's so difficult that they think the only choice is to end their life. So that's where we come in and say, I don't want to take you to the mental hospital, but I want you to live. So I'm going to take you. I don't want to call the police because they might not handle this the right way, but I want you to live. And so, what's the alternative? So just, keep that in mind that most people do not want to end their lives. The people that really want to end their lives, they do it. And sometimes people won't even, they'll drop little hints here and there. Oh, I'm going to give away my possessions. Oh, I don't care about this anymore. And so, listening to those little things, sometimes they're leaving little breadcrumbs. So having that ear to hear and that the eyes to see, sometimes, this is where we could come in spiritually, not just, from a therapeutic standpoint, but as a child of God, what is God telling you about this situation?
And that's a very important, and that's again where the church does come in, uh, is we can provide that spiritual guidance and support when it comes to somebody really wanting to end their life. And we have to again have that spiritual ear to at least hear what they're saying and hear what they're really crying out for,
Yes.
is that help that they need. um and and the crisis line, correct me if I'm wrong, Doc, the crisis line, if you don't want to call 911, is 988.
Yes.
And
Correct.
988 is nationwide, and that'll get you connected to the crisis intervention teams across the nation. So, and it's, with it being a nationwide mental health crisis number, it'll get you connected to that local support that is right in the area. So I am correct about that, right?
You are, Reverend, and it is 24 hours, 7 days a week. And some of my clients have reached out to them and they've been very helpful.
um, and for those of us that are veterans, we also have the Veterans Crisis Line that is open 24/7 as well. And from what I do understand is that if you do call 988 and you let them know that you're a veteran, they will connect you to the Veterans Crisis Line. because we sometimes have that unique set of challenges that the normal person may not necessarily understand. Um, and so with that, they know how to get us connected to the veteran side, and that'll allow us to talk to another veteran that can understand explicitly what is going on, what we're going through, and talk us down from that ledge
Mhm.
while they have us on the phone. And at the same time, still get us the local support that we do need as well. So,
Reverend Mike,
yes, sir. Good morning, Brother Allen.
good morning. I have truly enjoyed the conversation, but I got a comment I would like to make. Born and raised in the South, you know how elderly people sometimes is very apprehensive about who they deal with. So my question is, are there some means or ways of having a selection process, like someone that look like you or active response? Sometimes elderly people, they really reject, it's just the way that they was brought up, in the environment in which they was raised up in. So my question is there some means if you need help or assistance or someone that maybe you can select or choose someone that they feel comfortable with? Or do you understand my question?
I think so. Are you asking like, um, who is best fit to care for the elderly, especially like individuals from the South who are, have a particular way about who's going to take care of them? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, because specifically say someone black or someone that's a minority that
Yeah.
they feel comfortable, they can relate to, and so forth.
Yes. Absolutely. So, that's where family comes in. You know, we're known for, not putting our elderly in nursing homes, right? We like to care for our family ourselves as Black individuals. So, yeah, and this is where, like, as a person starts to age, preparing in advance, okay, who's going to take care of our elderly, family member? Start developing that relationship with them, because as they get older, sometimes they can get a little stubborn, right? And
Mhm.
so we need somebody who's going to be patient. Like when my grandmother was, almost 100, she passed away at 99. And so what one family member said, I'll quit my job, I'll go take care of grandma. But okay, but she was not the best selection because she didn't have patience. So we had to get some other help in there. So yeah, we want somebody that looks like us. Um, and we want, I think patience is the main thing. And there's trainings that we can do on how to work with the elderly who have dementia. That would be a whole nother training because, just repeating yourself, getting louder, that's not going to work. Whether it's with the elderly or with a child, typically that does not work. So patience, a loving care. Oh, okay, you want to go to the store? Yeah, let's go to the store. Get in the car, drive around the block and come back. They're probably not going to remember that they didn't go to the store, right? Or they might say, I want to draw, I want to paint. Okay, give them a safe space to paint and make a mess. But the mindset of the caregiver needs to be in sync with the person that we're caring for. Because if we're thinking it's going to be just like a regular normal day, we're setting ourselves up for failure. We need to understand that things have changed. How are we going to care for this person? Maybe we have to take shifts. You
Mm.
know, I got the day, you've got the night. You take Saturday, I'll take Sunday. I don't know if that helps.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Elder, go ahead.
Thank you so much. one of the things I thought I heard in Brother Allen's question was, we have these resources, right, that we can call 988 and all those, and we have those resources, but the reluctance may be, will someone on that other side be culturally competent to who I am and what I need? Is that correct, Brother Allen?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I
Let's
thought
talk.
that's what I heard. Um, and so I know in a lot of places they are trying to make sure that if you call in and you're already in crisis, that you can ask for someone who speaks a certain language or someone who, whatever the criteria is that's most important to you. And what I found is by and large, they'll try to connect you with that person, if that person is on Connectable. So yes, I totally agree. I do non-medical home care for the elderly, so the dementia, the memory care, and all of that. Um, those trainings, yes, particular kinds of training. But what I thought I heard him say is, if we take advantage of these resources, will somebody on the other end be willing to understand who I am and not just my symptoms?
Yes, I think, asking for what we prefer is the way to start. I would say there's a shortage of people that look like us, and
Mhm.
we need more people of color, and there's definitely a shortage. So we could definitely ask,
Mhm.
and hopefully we would get somebody who would be understanding. All therapists have to go through cultural training, but that's textbook. It's not, a real lived experience.
Yeah. So it can happen. It's not guaranteed, but it can happen.
Yes, ma'am.
The other thing I would offer is, as a teachable moment, is one of the ways we help with eradicating the stigma is how we language it. And Reverend Hopkins, what came to mind when you said veterans and then under normal folks, I would probably just challenge that and say non-veterans, because veterans are normal folks too.
Uh, Very true.
Yeah. So anytime we're comparing ourselves, is that and non that, you know.
Yes.
All right. That's all I have for real this time.
Okay, so this is what we're going to do at this point. We're going to go ahead. Uh, Francis, if there is a way that you could stop sharing your screen for
Yes.
me, I would certainly appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Okay.
All right, perfect. Um, I'm going to take the spotlight off of you for a second. Okay, I think we're good. So thank you for those of you that have joined us via social media. We appreciate you coming in. Obviously, this recording is going to be allow you to go back and listen to the presentation once again, and I hope you were able to get something out of it uh, that will lead you just to help at least one person, because all of us know at least one person that uh, maybe have mental health issues, uh, or they could be nearing crisis. Be that support, be that support that they need uh, in initially getting the right steps, and knowing that the church is here to support. The church is here to help walk through the process, because it is okay to have Jesus and to have a therapist, and sometimes even to have that medication as well. So just know that. Just know that. Just know that. Uh, so we'll end the live feed with our social media group. We say God bless you and God keep you as our sincere prayer. For those of you that are joining us on Zoom, just stick around. Let's go ahead and end the live stream, and then we'll just continue on with